Hello everyone. In the previous video, we had a grass cutter engine and it was not starting. So I tested it for compression and basically it had zero compression. And I had to open up the engine completely, and upon further inspection, I found that the cylinder was badly scratched. So I had to buy this cylinder and crankcase. The cylinder for this engine does not come separately, so I had to buy the full kit. The old crankshaft is perfectly fine, so we are gonna use it. Also, I had to buy a new piston as the old one was scratched pretty bad. So first we are gonna start with attaching this piston to this crankshaft. Before that, let's first install the piston rings. This piston comes with 5 rings. Out of them, 2 are compression rings, 1 is a spacer ring and 2 are oil rings. So first we need to install this spacer ring. This piston has 3 slots as you can see, and this spacer ring will go in the first slot. Also, while installing these rings, make sure to not apply much force as these rings are brittle and they tend to break easily. You can follow the image that's on your screen to install these rings in proper orientation. So we installed the spacer ring. Now we need to install these oil rings. The 2 thin rings that you get in this piston kit are the oil rings. One of them will go to the bottom of the spacer ring and the remaining one will go on the top. While installing the 2 oil rings, make sure their cuts face opposite to each other. So after installing the oil rings, we will install the compression rings. Out of the 2 compression rings, the black one will go in the second slot and the silver ring will go in the last slot. Also, while installing the compression rings, make sure the mark faces upwards. And like the oil rings, the cuts should be opposite to each other. Now we will attach the piston to the crankshaft. While doing so, you need to make sure that the arrow on the piston faces the carburetor side and the dot faces the spark plug. So now the piston is connected to the crankshaft, but before installing it into the cylinder, make sure the locks are in their place. Also, once again, check the rings if the cuts are facing in opposite directions. Before installing the piston into the cylinder, make sure you coat the cylinder as well as the piston with engine oil. So before we install the piston, we need to install the valves. So we have two valves, one is for the exhaust and one is for the inlet. Out of them, the larger one will go on the carburetor side, that's the inlet, and the smaller one will go on the exhaust side. Make sure to coat them with oil as well. Also to mention, lapping these valves is necessary. I already did it off camera, so if you bought a new cylinder kit, you should lap the valves as it prevents them from leaking. If you do not lap the valves, you will have compression issues. After placing the valves in their seats, you can use a piece of cloth or a tissue paper, place it in the cylinder. This prevents the valves from falling while you install the locks. Now before attaching top case with the bottom case, make sure to apply some gasket maker as it prevents any leaks. Also before applying gasket maker, make sure to clean all the surfaces. Now that the engine is completely assembled, we need to set the timing. To set the timing, we will have to align this dot on the gear of this crankshaft with the timing gear. First, we'll bring the dot to the top by rotating the crankshaft. Now we need to align the dot on the crankshaft with the dot of this timing gear. So the timing is now spot on. Also rotate the engine a couple of times and make sure if the dots align again. You can see the dots align perfectly, so the timing is spot on. Now we will install the tappets and the push rods, which is pretty easy to do. After installing the push rods and the tappets, we will install the rockers. So after we install the rockers, we have to set the valve clearance. At this position, when the two dots of the timing gears align with each other, the piston is at top dead center. And at top dead center, we can set the valve clearance. And the valve clearance for this engine is 0.08 mm for the inlet and 0.1 mm for the exhaust. So now that most of the things are done, I will attach the remaining parts like the flywheel and the coil. So I will just fast forward through this bit as it's just opposite of this assembly. You can set the gap between the coil and the flywheel by placing a business card between them. I installed the gas tank off camera. Also, I had to remove the coil again as I needed to tighten the clutch. I do not have a specific tool which can lock the flywheel while I tighten up the clutch later, so I had to do it now. So most of the things are done and this engine is ready to be tested. But before we do that, let me install the remaining plastics and the handle of camera and then we will test it. So we bought this grass cutter engine outside, attached the handle and the blade. Now let's pull the engine over and see what we get. So the engine is running perfectly fine and the knocking you may hear on idle is coming from clutch and has nothing to do with the engine. The clutch is bad and needs to be replaced. So yeah, that was it for this video. If you like this video, please make sure to subscribe the channel and keep watching. Thanks everyone.